All right, today is the 17th of March, St. Patrick's Day. We've gone over chapters 16 and 17 in part 4 of our book, Utilizing jQuery UI. And we're going to go over chapters 18 and 19 today. So chapter 18 is Advanced Interactions Using jQuery Interaction Widgets. If you look up on the screen, I'm out here on jQuery UI.com. All right. Chapter 18 is this stuff right here. Everybody see what I'm kind of making a circle around? It's on draggable, droppable, resizable, selectable, and sortable. Draggable and droppable typically work together. All right. Then chapter 19, which we'll go over next, is on most of the widgets that you see right here. All right. So that's what we'll be talking about today. All right. And also what will be discussed a little bit later is what's referred to as the jQuery UI widget factory. And if you go out to the learn.jquery.com site, you'll notice that there's a whole section in there on the jQuery UI. All right. And a big part of it, if you look up on the screen here, I've copied this for you. This is out in the folder that had Tuesday's date on it. All these articles, I went and broke them all out and made individual Word documents, but you have them. And you'll notice there's a big thing in there, getting started with jQuery UI, how it works, theming, how to use the theme roller, and then there's a big thing in here on the widget factory. All right, what it is, how to use it, how to invoke widgets, and how to extend widgets, meaning how to create your own custom widgets. All right. So with that said, let's just jump into the chapter. We'll jump right into chapter 18. All right. So Chapter 18 in our book starts on page 495. And again, as you can see, advanced interactions using jQuery UI interaction widgets. And what we discuss in here, drag and drop functionality, resizable functionality, all right, selection functionality, and sorting functionality. So if I drop back and if you take a look here at what I've just shown you, all right, and if you look, for example, in here, if I go to draggable, I mean, that should be pretty obvious what that is, all right? And again, the source code to do that, as always, is shown right here. That's what I've made available for you. The droppable, which oftentimes works with a draggable, is right there, all right? And again, the source code is there as well. The resizable puts the little thing on here, and when you put your mouse over it, and it turns into a kind of a I don't know what you call it, on an angle type of pointer. You can make whatever it is larger or smaller. The selectable, which allows you to either click an item or hold down on Control and click multiple items. All right, or click an item, hold Shift, click another item. I guess it doesn't like that, so Shift. So I can go and click and select as many as I want, okay? And then finally, the sortable. And we talked about this in the class yesterday. You know, the other class, the jQuery class. And I tried to tell people where you might be able to use some of this stuff. Now, I mean, let's be honest here. The draggable, I don't know. You know, if you'd want to add something where the person would be able to drag something, that might be a possibility. All right. The droppable, all right. What you're going to see when we go through the stuff that's in the book is they have an example in this chapter where you've got a bunch of thumbnails on the left-hand side. All right. So over here, if you look up on the screen, there's a bunch of thumbnails there. And then there's a box here, and there's a box here. And if you take one of the thumbnails and you drag it over to the box, you get a big picture of the thumbnail. And if you take the thumbnail and you drag it to the other box, you get a picture of it, but it shows you the path to that thumbnail. Now, would you want to do that? Well, that would be one way if you wanted to go and add a page to your site that maybe would say something like some of our satisfied customers. And then over here, you'd have a bunch of thumbnails where you just grab some clip art or whatever, and people could drag over here to see a bigger picture. That would be an example of how you could use draggable and droppable. All right. The resizable, I don't know if there's anything that you're going to be able to use with that. I'm not sure. All right. The selectable, there's different ways that you could possibly or potentially use that. All right. Anytime, again, you're giving the user options and you want to allow them to multi-select, you could use this. And then again, finally with a sortable, maybe you want to show all of the different campus locations or something like that. But maybe you want them to be assortable, so if people don't want them in that order, they can put them in the order in which they want to see things. All right. So as we go through this, again, they talk about the jQuery widget factory. And as I mentioned to you already, if you go out here, there's the widget factory. All right. Why use it, how to use it, etc. They define, as it says, the widget factory as being a base on which all the UI widgets are built. You can use the widget factory to build a plugin of your own, all right, or to grab things that are currently out there. And the last thing that's out there is on extending widgets. So basically taking an existing widget and adding something to it to kind of make it your own, all right? Now, you may or may not be aware of this, and I don't even know if it still works like this, but for years, when people worked with Unix, some of the best tools that were ever written in Unix were written by users. Because what users did was they would create a tool, and if it was a cool tool, what they do would be they would submit the tool to the people who basically ran the Unix operating system. And if it was a good tool, what happened was the next time they would update their manual, they would add the tool to it, and the person would get kudos in there. Do you understand what I'm saying? In a way, it was kind of like the beginning of open source when they were doing that kind of stuff. And the reason I'm telling you that is one thing about jQuery is it's got a very big community, and it's got a lot of openness in it. So it's kind of cool to go in there and write your own widget. All right, but there's a chance, at least, if you go out and write your own widget and you decide after you write your own widget you're going to submit it to jQuery, someone else may have already written the same widget. All right, so as far as the different methods and events, here's some of the methods that are available to these things. All right, you can create them, you can destroy them, you can disable and enable them. All right, and they show you some examples here. They show you an example with the mouse option and understanding things. And Zane, you weren't here the other day, but believe it or not, you were on display because I very much liked the way that you set up your home page where you had it fade into view and drop down. So I showed that to both classes, and I said that was something innovative. I said the only thing you have to watch out for with that, and what you did was fine, but sometimes you get a cool effect like that, and a person brings up the site, and you may want to actually put a little bit of a timer in there, maybe even 5 seconds, because sometimes when the person brings up the site, if it comes down right away, they didn't even see it. And it's cool stuff. And if you're going to put in cool stuff, you want people to acknowledge that you did cool stuff. But sometimes somebody types in a URL, they hit enter, they're sitting there, they're waiting, oh, it's up, and they may have missed it. All right? All right. So they start with the drag and drop widgets. And as it says, typically these digits work in tandem. All right. Now, when is this kind of stuff important? Well, quite often, your position on the screen is going to be important when you're working with games. As an example, if you remember when we worked on that game, that very simple Race to the White House game that I showed you a few weeks ago. All right. We had to make sure that all of our Hillarys that were dropping out of the sky trying to stop Bernie from his quest for the White House, we had to position them because we didn't want to group them all where they were one huge Hillary. We wanted 4 or 5 different Hillarys type of an idea. So again, quite often when you're working with a game, that's where the X and Y axis can become really important. All right. Some of the other things, being able to stack things, Z-index, we've talked about these before. All right. Drag start and drag stop. The other day, those of you who were here for that class the other day, we were going through that example in Android. Remember we did that lefty and righty and we added that alert dialog? I don't know if you remember that or not, but when we brought it up and the alert dialog came up, all right, the background, the main screen was grayed out. And you had this modal dialog that came up. And you had to answer, are you a righty or a lefty? And once you answered it, that modal dialog went away, and then the background faded into, so it was now the foreground. Well, the reason I'm telling you that is sometimes if you're about to do a drag event, you might want something special to happen at the beginning of the event, and or you might want something to happen at the end of the event. So with Draggable, as it says there, you can use drag start and or you can use drag stop. So in this first try it out that's here, adding drawable images to a web page. Well, what are they doing? They're adding stuff to the page and you're able to move them around. All right, so what this was chapter 17. I'm sorry, chapter 18. Oh, that's a later one. Pretty obvious with that. Again, do you want to give the user that kind of ability? I'll take your question in a second. The answer is maybe not in an Uber app, all right? But have you ever, I mentioned this to the other class yesterday. I don't think I said it to you guys, but do you remember as a little kid, maybe you saw this, maybe you played it, maybe I'm dating myself too much where you're like, what the hell are you talking about? But we had a game when I was a little kid. It was a little thing like this, and it had numbers in it, like 1 to 12 or something like that, and it had 13 spaces. And the idea was one space was blank, and you tried to line it up so it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then the last space was there. You could make yourself something like that with images. See what I'm saying? Now, that would be way too easy, but you could do it based on time, or you could do whatever you wanted to do if you wanted to do that. Another example of that, again, I know I'm dating myself because most of you probably don't remember this, but there used to be a game show on TV, it was called Concentration. And you had a board with about like 1 to 30 on it, and you'd pick a number. And like you pick number 1, and it might say vacation to Florida. And then you'd have to match it with the other ones that were there. And there was something behind it. All right, you tried to guess different prizes. You could do something like that in here. All right, again, I'm not saying you'd want to do that, but I'm just saying as examples. Your question.
Yeah, when you slid that first one over, did it have a bouncing effect when you dropped
It looked like it did.
Okay.
Yeah, I noticed the same thing.
Yeah, okay, cool.
But you could set whatever effect you wanted on one or more of these. In fact, if you take a look at the code, all right, there's a bounce right there, and it's on the second one. It looks like that's the only one. I mean, of course, there'd be nothing to stop you, as you know, from putting it on all of them. All right, so that would take it. That's the second one. So you get nothing. You got some here. All right. I'm not sure which one they consider to be the second one. It must be this one.
That was on the drag stop.
Okay.
It was like the drag stop.
Okay.
And then stop.
All right. But again, you can set this up to make it do whatever you want it to do. So again, draggable oftentimes works with droppable. Here are the major methods that you use with droppable. And here are the major events that go along with droppable. Yes?
Do you want us to projects like that, or can we have a tab on our menu on the Uber site?
You can, yeah, I would rather have you have a tab on the Uber site. If you want, you can create a page, or two, whatever you want to do. And the other question that got asked to me yesterday was, okay, the stuff that you want us to do with some of this, one person asked, they said, okay, if I want to make changes to my form, do I have to change all three of them? No, just change the Jquery one. That's fine if you're going to add different things. All right? If you want to change all three, you can, but I'm not trying to give you that much work to do.
Just like if you wanted to mess around with the stuff and
Yeah.
but not be a part of the website, could we set like the menu to say special?
Yeah, you like you said, and even tab effects are discussed in the next chapter. So you could set up a page that had multiple tabs on it if you wanted to do that. All right. Now this next one that's shown here, this is the draggable. Again, notice when I take my mouse and put it here, I get the bigger picture. And when I take it and put it here, I get the path to where that is. So what I was saying is, for example, you could get rid of this one right here, keep this one, but have this set up where you had a whole bunch of images here, see our happy customers. And when you drag any of those in there, you could have it fill up as much of the screen here as you wanted to, just as an example of something that could be done. All right. Again, I've said this to you before. My hope is that you create a site and you're able to show this during your design and implementation projects little demo that you're going to give at the end of the semester. That I want you to blow the socks off the people who are here watching it. I want them to say, this is really cool. I don't even know how to do that. We got to talk to that guy. We got to talk to that gal. Maybe we want to hire them. I told the class yesterday, and in a way, I'm pimping you out, for lack of better words. But the goal is that one or more of you, after you show your project, somebody will come up to me, or they'll come up to you and say, who was that guy? Do you have an email for him? I'd like to talk to him. I'd like to talk to her. That kind of an idea. The resizable one, the big thing in here, as far as I'm concerned, is this, and that's working with the aspect ratio. Because in the example that they have here, they talk about resize, starting and stopping. But if you look at this example, this is the one that says resize. If you look right on the screen here, well, what didn't they do? There's no aspect ratio. In other words, when you look at this, it looks about the way it should. But when you do this, do you want to keep an aspect ratio? In other words, when you start to change the size of this, the guy doesn't look like that. You know what I mean? And it's, do you want to keep, that looks a little bit better, but basically it's the type of picture that it is. All right. So if I keep dragging this over, I can eventually make it big enough that it'll look pretty much the same. All right. So that's the one thing that I would be concerned with when you're talking about resizing, would be the aspect ratio and whether or not you want to keep it. Okay. Again, the selectable widget, just an example of how you might want to use this. And I'm not saying you would, but again, an example. Because a lot of people have been asking me, well, how do I do this? How do I add this? But with the selectable, remember I told you when we did iteration 1 of the website, you had radio buttons. And the radio button said like main campus, Milton, Monroe, CTS, Beloit Center or something like that. Now, if you want to, you could change those. You could change that to one or more text boxes. All right. You could set it up like this selectable, and you could have each one of them in there. And you could say, which do you want for your home campus or campuses? All right, where you would allow them to select one or more. All right. And then finally, the last thing that's discussed in this particular chapter is sortable. All right. And if we look at the example that's in here, it's pretty obvious what's going on. I mean, I already showed you a sortable example here where you can grab this stuff and, make it do whatever it is you want it to do. And when you're doing that, It doesn't have to necessarily be this. It could be anything that you want it to be. It could be images. It could be something else that you wanted. Here's the sortable example that's given in the book. Now, you notice that the stuff here isn't working very well, and it's because when I copied stuff over, my path to my images is screwed up. All right, so none of that's working. All right, and that's pretty much it for chapter 18. So let's just jump right into chapter 19. As I mentioned before, if you look up on the screen, chapter 19, this was 18 right here, talking about these 5 things: draggable, droppable, resizable, selectable, and sortable. Chapter 19, by and large, is on all of the stuff right here. So if we do take a quick look, accordion. You may very well, for me or for someone else, have already created an accordion. Again, how would you use that in your site? I've mentioned this before. An FAQ page, frequently asked questions. Quite often those are done with accordions. So going back to what Zane asked before, yeah, that would probably necessitate a new page. All right. Autocomplete. If you decide, in this example, what they've done right here is they've got a list of programming languages. In fact, if I show you this, if we view the page source, somewhere in here, these are all the different programming languages that they have in there. All right, there's even more than that, but those are the ones I'm showing you. All right, so why am I showing you that? Well, if we look in here and I type in a P, that shows me every language that's in that list that has a letter P in it. You could come in with a regular expression and say, I only want things that start with P, in which case you'd only get the bottom 3, Perl, PHP, and Python. But if you wanted to, you could set it up, again, where you had here campus, and you put that in there and you stuck it in with an autocomplete. So if I type in an M, it would show me Milton, it would show me Monroe, let's see, Center for Transportation Studies, no, it wouldn't show me that one. Beloit Center, no, it wouldn't show me that one. If you put Janesville, it wouldn't show you that with an M, but if you put Main Campus, it would then show you Milton, Monroe, all right, etc. Does that make sense? That's just a way it could be used. Buttons, they're just talking about customizing buttons here, all right? The date picker, you could set it up if you wanted to, where you'd be able to schedule when you wanted to be picked up, all right? Dialogues, well, not for you guys. You guys, if you remember, what I've had you do since day one was I wanted you to come in and grab all that information, and once you wrote it to the forum and the forum was validated, I wanted you to open up a PHP page, all right, and write that form letter. But what I'm asking the first-year people to do now is when they get done, because they haven't learned PHP yet, is to create a dialogue. And in that dialogue like this, show all the information that was just entered. All right? Sometimes you see stuff like this that says, basically, all of your information has been correctly entered and validated. You will be hearing from us shortly, type of an idea. So you could use that for a dialogue. The menu, again, this is an unbelievably simplistic menu, and you'll notice that it is a vertical menu rather than the horizontal menu most of us are used to seeing. You can create all this stuff that's shown here with just CSS. You don't need jQuery for it. All right. Progress bar. I asked the question yesterday. I was surprised most people had heard of it. Has everybody here heard of a Kickstart? A lot of times when you've got someone who's starting a new venture, they'll create a Kickstart where they ask people to contribute. All right. A lot of these Udemy courses that I've taken, people have branched out and they're creating their own stuff. And they're saying, hey, I want to create this whole new thing, but I'm looking for some startup capital. And if you contribute, for example, $10, all right, then you get a free course. If you do $100, you might get, we're going to have 6 courses. You get free access to all 6 for your, for lifetime type of thing. Well, sometimes what you'll see with those things is you'll see a progress bar. because maybe their goal is to make $25,000, and in this case, maybe they're about, I don't know, approximately a third of the way through. So maybe $9,000 of the way through. All right, that would be something that you could use there, or maybe if you do want to use a kick or a progress bar with something like Uber, you could say the goal would be that you for your the number of people on Uber would be to have a certain number. All right, that you wanted to average 8 people per car or whatever, 5 people per car, and you could show where you were getting to that. It's interesting with Uber because we all heard that a month ago where that guy went nuts and was shooting people. Now I don't know if you've heard the newest. This is no joke. He is suing Uber for $10 million, claiming like mental anguish, etc., that they put him through. All right. Not only is there a menu, there's a select menu where you can have drop downs. You know how to work with these. All right. Sliders. Yeah, you probably know sliders too well. Spinners. Again, in this example, typically you would have minimums and maximums. They don't have one in here. Usually you wouldn't want to allow negative numbers. Tabs, again, what you mentioned before, Zane, that could be part of a page or whatever you wanted it to be, as an example. And finally, tooltips. The big thing with tooltips is don't overuse them. For example, you might put a tooltip, just as an example, on your form for the email that says, have you seen those ever, where it says this is used for internal use only. We do not spam you or provide your list, your email to other people, etc. You could put something like that in there. So you'll notice in here there's a tooltip there, there's one there, there's one there, etc. All right. The big thing with tooltips is it's really easy to overuse them. All right. Okay, so let's quickly go over the material for the chapter. Again, adding autocomplete, slider, and spinner, using a date picker, stylizing dialogues and buttons, tooltips, organizing your web page with custom menus and tab panels, and applying status bars. Basically everything that you've just been shown. All right. So they give you some examples here. And here's an example of adding a slider which does have a minimum and does have a maximum. All right. Now, we're not doing it here. I don't see the tie-in exactly, but you already know the logic. I suppose if you wanted to, you could have a page that had a little games or had a little something. You could ask the person their height and weight, because you sure as hell now know how to figure out their BMI. All right. And if you wanted to, you could do their height and or their weight, and you could end up using sliders if you wanted to do that. All right. So here's an example of an accordion. But notice in here, it's not an FAQ page. It's a page with images, which is fine. But the thing is, if you're going to use something like that, all right, you notice how they've sized the pictures so they're all the same size or basically all the same size? You want to do that. You don't want one of these to be really big and the next one to be really small, etc. It just looks amateurish. All right, that's not what you want to be remembered for. But again, it doesn't have to be. It very well could be an FAQ page. All right, but as an example, you could show the different campuses like this, couldn't you? You could have a listing of all the campuses, have it in an accordion, just to show people a picture of each campus. All right. Here's the autocomplete. They use day of the week. And when they did this, all right, just so you know it, there it is. They don't have Saturday and Sunday in there, okay? So these are just weekdays. And they show some stuff, again, with configuring buttons and the like. It's not that big a thing. The big thing, they do give quite a bit of spiel in here talking about the date picker. And you'll notice in here, again, if you wanted to have a scheduler or a schedule, you can schedule this month and next month, for example. You could show 2 different months as they're showing here, if you wanted to do that. And again, I was talking to one of the first year students, and they were like, well, this is kind of hard because you're not given the best requirements. Yeah, and when you get out into the real world, if you go out and you are working for someone, ask people in here who have done different internships, or ask Mike who's done work out in the, quote, real world, unquote, that sometimes, what do you want? I don't know what I want. What they're telling you is, show me something, and then I'll basically start showing you what I don't want. That's how it works. All right? That's why a lot of times when somebody approaches me and says, well, I want somebody to do an internship, I tell them to start going out looking at their competitors and looking at their sites, looking at other sites to see if there's something that's in that site. We wouldn't duplicate it, but something that's in that site that they like. All right. Menus we've already talked about in different ways that you can set those up. Progress bars, again, I already mentioned. Slider bars. I like this example. Maybe you've seen this before online or whatever. So what they're showing here is, notice they made the color of the sliders red, green, and blue. All right. Why? To show you, as you slide, it's got the value in there, and then it's got the corresponding color. All right. That's kind of neat. And it's pretty simple. Not really very much code when you look at it. All right. The spinner, I think that there's not much more you can say about that. All right. Tab panels, we already mentioned. And again, notice what they have there. Images, content, and widgets. All right. And there's an example. Tooltips I've already hit on with you. Again, the thing with custom widgets as we finish up this chapter, notice creating custom widgets is a fairly simple process. The bottom line is, typically what a custom widget is you take an existing widget and you add your own stuff to it. All right? And feel free to do that in here. And that's it. So I want to do one more thing and then we're finished. That is, I want to quickly go over, okay, virtually everybody has finished the first part of the project. If you haven't, you better get your, as the saying goes, rear in gear. All right? I did midterm grades. I did them yesterday. I gave everybody an S in everything. All right? I hate midterm grades. But go back if you need to and take a look at the stuff that's in there. Again, that was due now a month ago, basically. All right. Then, number 2, the one that probably you're either still working on or maybe finishing up on. That was from 12 through 15. For 12, hide and show, toggle, fade in, fade out, etc. You were doing animation. All right. 13, I asked you, again, just to spruce up the Jquery web form, to add different things to it, as was shown in Chapter 13. For Chapter 14, you were to add an image gallery to your main page. If you decide after you create that image gallery that maybe for Part 3, you want that to be a page in there rather than the main page, you want to do something like I just mentioned where you've got thumbnails you can drag and drop, go ahead and do that. That's fine. You were to add a new web page with an interactive table that could either be a scheduling table or something else. All right. Again, it should be something applicable to the site. All right. Chapter 15, we're not touching. And then in this last one, your last assignment here, this is going to be the last one that you're going to be assigned. All right. What I am going to do after the break, I'm starting to get into right now, and the first year people don't even know this, but I'm starting to get into and put some stuff out there for both Angular and for single page applications. But for Chapter 16, again, notice I wish I would have done this earlier, but I didn't. These are all hyperlinked. So I want you to go and roll your own website theme using the Jquery theme roller. In other words, grab an existing one and go over to the roll your own that's on the side and change some of the font sizes or colors or styles or whatever. For Chapter 17, you may or may not remember that, but from Chapter 17, what I had shown you was this one example. So again, if I go over to pulsate. All right? And you can add, I wouldn't add all of those, but grab one or two that you think might be, that you could use for the site. For Chapter 18, which we just covered, again, if there's something you can do with draggable and or droppable and or resizable and or selectable and or sortable, I've given you some examples. All right? And for Chapter 19 that we just finished, the autocomplete, spinner, accordion, etc., if possible, add a custom widget. Again, this is all hyperlinked. This is going to bring you right to the theme roller. So again, you can grab one. All right, so you can go to the gallery, you can find one you like, then you can do the roll your own where you make changes in it. All right. The effects, that's exactly where I just took that thing on that I showed you. All right. For the widget options, should look familiar. It's what we just covered right here. And for the last one, it's for the widgets that are right here. All right. And again, if you want more on the query components or in the customizing, there it is. That's the widget factory, and this was their custom widget that they created in here. So, as already has been mentioned, the next 3 weeks, once you come back from break, remember, don't come here next week. Well, you can. I don't know if the lab's going to be open. I don't know if anybody's going to be here. I have no idea. But let's say that you come in here and there's no one here at all down here. I do believe that the secretaries are still here and all the administrative staff, I believe. All right? That's Monday through Thursday. A week from tomorrow is Good Friday. The school is closed Friday, Saturday, and Easter Sunday. It's closed. Don't even think about coming in. But if you want to come in Monday and or Tuesday and or Wednesday and or Thursday, if you come in here and there's no one in this room, go up to room 2503 and Tammy can open up this door. All right? Now, if you say, what if I need a Mac or whatever, you'll have to talk to her about that. I don't know how she'll want to handle that. All right? I know that I'm actually meeting with somebody regarding a potential internship that's going to take most of Monday. All right? Because it's out in Monroe. And Wednesday, I've got a dentist appointment. So if I do come in here, it'll be Tuesday or it'll be Thursday. But once you come back, the week of the 28th, the week of the 4th, the week of the 11th, all 3 of those weeks will be lab for this class. All right? So we'll begin our discussion of Part 5, the Angular, which is the last 10 chapters of the book, on Monday, April 18th. As it says, please try to catch up as soon as possible if you're behind. And the very last thing that I promised that I'll show you here is, just so you know this, if I go out to the P drive, as I just put this out there this morning, there already is an in-class folder for 419, a month from now. And what's in there? Well, some articles in here on single-page applications, a couple books that I grabbed from that itebooks.info on single-page applications, and a couple books that they had there on Angular. All right? We're going to get into Angular. I'm not going to give you an assignment on it, but at least you'll have been exposed to it, and we'll have plenty of time to talk about model view controller patterns. All right? So there's 10 chapters, and we come back, we've got, the first 3 weeks you're going to have for lab. So the week of the 18th, the week of the 25th, the week of like the 2nd, the 9th, and the 16th. We'll have 5 weeks. That's 10 chapters. Do the math. I'm going to try to, on those 5 Tuesdays, to go over 2021, then 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, and 29. Thursdays, after break for the rest of the semester, will be labs. I know some of you, when there's labs, you don't come in for whatever reason, but I'll be here. Mike will be here. If it's the afternoon, John will be here. All right? Questions on anything? All right, because that's all that I had.